lucky and get an ender pearl after, say, 4 attempts, leaving you with a 25% drop rate, but the more times you try, the closer and closer you should be getting to the true drop rate of 4.7%. And when you're talking about over 20 hours of live streams and hundreds of barter attempts, you'd expect the number to be pretty much closer to that expected value, which, and I'm just gonna call this fact out, means that if cheating was involved in this situation, it was the fact that Dream showed his work that got him flagged. It wasn't the individual record-setting run itself that set off the alarms, it was that plus all the other 20 plus hours of run attempts aired online around it. An individual run wouldn't have had enough drops to show any sort of subtle tampering or bias. In other words, if there was cheating involved, and this was just an individual run that happened offline, completely removed from any context, and then was submitted for consideration, none of this would have happened. There'd be no way to verify the validity of the run, unless, of course, I'm missing something here. Just thought it was an interesting loophole that this whole situation brought up that probably should be closed up. Now, let's think about an extreme example of luck: winning the lottery. The chance of you buying a lottery ticket and winning the Mega Millions jackpot are roughly 1 in 300 million. Those are some incredibly low odds, but obviously, some people do get lucky enough to win the lottery.
I won a lottery!
That's great.
And it wouldn't make sense to track down that lottery winner and question that person about cheating. On the other hand, if the same person were to win the jackpot multiple times, well, that's when fraud investigators are going to start getting involved. This example illustrates one of Dream's early responses to being singled out for the review, that he just happened to win the lottery. He got extremely lucky, and by looking only at those instances of extreme luck, the review team was seeing skewed numbers. Quote from his response: "Rather than taking a truly random sample, the sample starts when the luck seems off, and the sample ends as soon as I hit a personal best goal of 19 minutes. Although this can be touted as a random set of data, it is most definitely not." End quote. This is an issue known as sampling bias, referring to the fact that Dream's speedrunning streams weren't randomly chosen for review. People spent hours poring over the data specifically because someone noticed that it seemed to be getting luckier than normal. And obviously, if you scrutinize someone specifically because they seem to be getting lucky, when you look at the results, well, they're gonna seem luckier than normal. So to combat the bias, what everyone has been calculating and arguing about in their massive research papers are the odds of drops this lucky happening. Not specifically to Dream, but to literally any Minecraft player in existence. You know the old saying about how if a monkey is hitting keys at random on a typewriter for an infinite amount of time, it'll eventually write the complete works of Shakespeare? It's based on the idea that something super improbable will almost surely happen given enough time and enough attempts. And it's an actual theory, a statistical theory, called the infinite monkey theorem. Anyway, same thing applies here. Dream's luck was extreme, but how extreme was it? Both the Minecraft speedrunning team and the anonymous astrophysicist that Dream hired to write a rebuttal have submitted their numbers, but people seem to be getting those numbers confused. To directly quote from the original report, the Minecraft speedrunning team presented a number of 1 in 7.5 trillion. Well, that number is them basically saying, hey, let's assume that there are 1,000 Minecraft speedrunner monkeys at 1,000 keyboards. There's still only a 1 in 7.5 trillion chance of recreating the luck that we saw on Dream's streams. Conversely, Dream's astrophysicist determined the odds to be 1 in 100 million. The number 1 in 10 million gets thrown around a lot from Dream's rebuttal, but that's actually a different number. Comparing the two is actually like comparing apples to oranges. If you're looking for the best comparison, it's the speedrunning team's 1 in 7.5 trillion versus the astrophysicist's 1 in 100 million. But still, that leaves us with a massive difference in calculations. Why is that? Well, as much as I'd like it to be, it isn't something that has one big answer, but instead, a lot of smaller answers, which, you know, is why these arguments are happening in 20-plus page documents. It includes things like differences in the application of the stopping criterion, different estimates for the total number of live streams, other differences to account for sampling bias, and differences in accounting for p-hacking bias. We've already covered the sampling bias discussion in broad strokes, and we're about to touch on that last one, p-hacking, but as you can see, it's a lot, much more than I actually want to get into here. If you want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, I highly recommend Mathemaniac's video breaking down all the arguments point by point from a mathematical, deeply statistical perspective. Good job, Mathemaniac. Keep doing the good work. But all of this, I just hope, illustrates the wider point here, that this is a complex topic with a lot of different questions to consider, all using numbers that, at the very best, are rough estimates that are very flexible. Which leads us to the last point I want to talk about, p-hacking bias. P-hacking is sometimes also referred to as data dredging. It's basically the practice of looking for patterns questions and selectively presenting data to come to a conclusion. It's practically the principle that this channel was founded on. For instance, look at our Mario is Mental series of episodes from way back in the channel's history. In these episodes, I look through hundreds of Mario games to present you, the viewer, with selected data points to lead you to the conclusion that, yeah, Mario is indeed a sociopath. And to get there, I ignore decades of him acting heroically and selflessly to save the Mushroom Kingdom. Though, to be honest, this is actually to this day one of the theories that I still believe. I just can't ignore the fact that Mario whips DK in his early games, or he grinds Luigi's foot when he wins in the tennis match. Anyway, this process is sometimes described as post-dicting. You get it? It's the opposite of pre-dicting. Instead of coming up with a hypothesis and then doing an experiment that confirms the hypothesis, you start with a pile of data, and then you use the data to come up with a hypothesis to explain it after the fact. So how does this apply to our Minecraft speedrunning controversy? Well, in any game of Minecraft, there are lots of sources of randomness, but thus far we've only been looking at two: pearl trades and blaze rod drops. But what about other sources of luck, like the frequency of blaze spawns or the number of piglins that you're actually able to barter with? These are all random too. Just because two variables happen to be higher than you'd expect, how do we know that we're not just selectively choosing the data to come to the conclusion that cheating happened? Well, it all depends on the number of variables. If there are only 10 factors to consider and 2 are unusual, well then yeah, it's hard to deny that something suspicious is going on. But if there are, say, 1,000 possible variables, well, then it's very easy to cherry pick 2 of them and come up with a false correlation. In fact, there's a really fun website dedicated to exactly this. For instance, did you know that the declining divorce rates in Maine are actually tied to the decline in people eating margarine? It's true, there's a 99% correlation between the data points. The chart doesn't lie, but obviously our conclusion does. Divorce and margarine are completely unrelated, unless of course marriages are suffering due to poor butter substitute choices. But when you're looking at a huge pool of data, you can come to practically any conclusion. And that's the other major point of contention between Dream and the speedrunning team. How many sources of RNG are there that could be manipulated as possible sources of cheating? How large is this pool of data? The Minecraft speedrunning team made a quote-unquote generous estimate of 10 different factors. Their words, not mine. Dream claimed it was closer to 37. And honestly, the frustrating thing about this is that there's really no clear-cut answer, because it's not just about how many variables there are, but also how measurable those variables are. I bring all of this up, 1, to explain it a bit more clearly, and 2, to point out that some of these calculations and differences between the numbers are based on numbers coming from assumptions that can feel kind of arbitrary, and that's where there's room for debate here. But all of this, for as great as it is to talk about statistics, I think is missing the point. Yes, it is essential to uphold integrity on speedrun boards, 100% absolutely super important, but are we sure that this is a game that should have a speedrun board in the first place? For all the back and forth on this topic, one thing that's not in dispute here is the dependence of luck in Minecraft 1.16 speedrunning. Well, the Nether update was much beloved by many Minecraft players outside of the speedrunning community, myself included, given the huge amount of theory fodder that it added to the game. The speedrunning community hasn't exactly welcomed it with open arms, and it's led to a bit of a divide, with Minecraft 1.16 considered so different from previous versions as to warrant its own leaderboard. The update substantially changes the amount of time needed to complete Minecraft under ideal conditions. As I'm recording this, the fastest pre-1.16 Minecraft speedrun has a completion time of 19 minutes 36 seconds, whereas with version 1.16, the fastest time is a mere 14 minutes and 36 seconds. So why would 1.16 be so divisive? Well, it all comes down to how you go fast in 1.16. The thing that makes 1.16 speedruns so much faster, saving as much as 5 minutes compared to previous versions of Minecraft, don't have to do with tricks like bunny hopping or diagonal bridging or other methods that Minecraft speedrunners have spent years perfecting. It all has to do with what we've been talking about this entire time: random events. And most specifically, the piglin barter. That ender pearl trade is where the extra speed of Minecraft 1.16 comes from compared to previous versions. And unlike bunny hop,
Both likes, comments. Oh. 50-50. What? What? Really right? What? I guess I just... Let me check. Okay, he's off, he's off. My sister's off. Wrong. What is that?